What's up, everybody? Draskyl here, bringing you some Deadlock content. So, for context, I've been playing this game a shit ton. It is very, very fun. I have over 300 hours right now. I've been playing for a couple of weeks, and I see a lot of questions that are probably going to be answered in dozens of other videos. So what I actually want to talk about is the stuff that people are probably likely to skip over because they don't think about it when they make the video, and that's fine. Right? People are going to be asking the normal stuff like, hey, what's the best character to pick? What are the top tier scaling heroes? Are there supports? What is this game actually like? If you're coming to this video for that kind of information, you're going to be disappointed because that's not what we're going to talk about. So what I do want to talk about is some of the more intricate parts of the laning phase, a little bit of itemization, and some stuff that is not super obvious inside of the actual game itself that you should know before you start actually playing. So we're just watching a regular game here. This is a couple of friends of mine just playing a lobby. Whatever you spectate, by the way, just as a little bit, you are a minute behind, so you're not going to be able to watch them live. But it's mostly because it was lagging in the game when people were live spectating. But anyway, so I think probably the first thing I want to talk about is the laning phase in of itself for people who are not familiar with any sort of MOBA. So if you didn't play League, you didn't play Smite, you didn't play Dota 2, all that stuff. The laning phase more or less boils down to how you manage the creeps, which are in this game are actually called troopers, and how you actually deal with getting hit by abilities and gun versus shooting them. Now, every single creep wave that spawns, you're going to see in the beginning here, there are actually 4 troopers on both sides. And if you look closely on the left-hand side, coming up here in just a minute, depending on how he moves his camera, you'll see the yellow creep right there with the banner on its back. That's called a medic creep. You'll hear it referred to a lot when people are talking about lanes, because it's the thing that's going to give you the ability to stay in lane in the very, very early game. It has a healing aura that it basically throws out, and if you look, you can actually see a little green tether attached to the haze here that goes to the creep, and as long as you're in that radius, every time it pulses the heal, you'll get that heal. So what a lot of lanes boil down to is, are you able to kill that creep quickly? Can you get to that creep? Are you getting spammed too much? You know, do you have to play forward or back? All this stuff you're going to learn in time. I wouldn't worry too much about it. This is more just like a basic idea of how you want to approach it. Now, we're watching a haze POV, so this character has really good bullet velocity. You're going for last hits. You're a scaling hero. You want to try to secure the souls, which are the things flying out of all the troopers every single time they die. And that's pretty much the 101 of the lane. You can deny the souls from the enemy creeps as well, and they're differentiated between orange and green. The green ones are yours when you kill their creeps, and the orange are theirs when they kill your creeps. And you can shoot either of them, so long as you actually have the bullet speed and the timing and the aim in order to do so. So a little bit about how to actually go about, you know, trading in lane and how to stand in a lane. This is more for the MOBA players who are coming into this game, because they're not as likely to understand the LOS as clearly as some of the people who've played like FPS, like Apex or Valorant or CSGO or whatever. But you really, really want to play angles so you take the least amount of shots that you can possibly take, right? I mean, that's just common sense. You don't really want to get shot without shooting them back, and you don't necessarily want to just take damage for no reason. So with that being said, there are a lot of places that you can actually stand in the lane. Like right here, obviously the shop, if there's no AoE abilities being thrown at you, you're not going to really take too much damage. If you're playing up like he is right now, it's very hard to shoot basically from any angle but the far side where the veils are, which is another mechanic we're going to cover in another video. But this one is more just trying to talk about the early game and like, what am I actually supposed to be doing? So by watching this and just seeing how they're actually playing, like standing near the medic creep, shooting the other medic creep when it's possible, and doing a little bit of trading and trying to go for kills and stuff, it looks like a lot, but as long as you're getting some creep kills and fighting, you don't really lose that much when you die. So we just saw the haze die there. You're going to notice that next to the souls, it just says 147, but there wasn't any loss there. So the deaths are a lot less punishing, so long as you're not losing damage on tower and also losing your own life, right? So like right there, the wave is actually equal. So they're not taking too much damage on the tower. It's a little bit, but you know, it's manageable. It's an important distinction to make because this game is very odd in how it does its unsecured soul system versus the secured soul system. Now, when you have an unsecured soul, you're acquiring it from either a box, which you'll see spread out all over the map, or you're killing a neutral creep, which don't even spawn until 2 minutes into the game. You have your small camps, your medium camps, your large camps. And once you start killing those, you're going to notice that there's going to be a red indicator next to the souls that says unsecured. Now, how do those actually work? When you have unsecured souls, you lose all of them when you die. Every single one will go away. So, if you want to get rid of the unsecured souls, there are two ways. You can spend all of your money, or you can basically wait for a very, very long time for them to eventually go away, which they do over time diminish, but it's not really that much. So why is this important? It's important because the unsecured souls are the ones that you spend last. So if you have unsecured souls, let's say you have 100 total souls, and 10 of them are unsecured. If you bought an item that cost 90 souls, you would still have 10 unsecured. So they're the absolute last ones to go. It's very important to keep this in mind because once you get to an item, if you have a very, very high amount of souls that are unsecured and you don't buy and then you end up dying afterwards, you're going to end up losing a lot. This is why the game is considered to be very swingy. Back and forth between, you know, somebody drops 1,000 souls, somebody drops 2,000 souls. That's mostly because people are not good at managing their money and buying stuff when they should buy it. And more or less, this is going to allow you to more steadily have an income if you're like those types of scaling characters. But if you're just pushing lanes and you're hanging out and you're not really spending too much time in the neutral areas, which you can now see spread out all over the map, they're indicated by the triangles. If there's a triangle with one little line under it, that's like a medium camp. A regular triangle is a small camp. And the two lines indicates an ancient camp or one of the toughest camps, which you probably won't be able to kill for a long time. So, with all that stuff out of the way, it is kind of a lot of information, but this isn't really meant to be something that you're going to learn in one sitting. You're just going to kind of develop the abilities over time, which is just how anything works. But the next thing we're going to talk about are items. Because this is probably one of the scariest aspects of the game. If you hit the shop, like if I'm going to go into the game here and I hit B, which is my shop hotkey, you're just going to see a whole bunch of stuff, right? And it's kind of overwhelming because there's 3 tabs, they're all different colors, and there's just a million things. But the primary thing that I want to focus on here is the early game items, because these are the ones that are going to dictate whether or not you have a game at all. And what I mean by that is a good couple of purchases in the early game can make or break your laning phase, pretty much hands down, right? So a little bit earlier we talked about bullet velocity. There's a new item that's been added to the game within the last 2 weeks that increases your bullet velocity, which helps you secure souls. Very important for being able to acquire any sort of money. Some characters desperately need that item just to be able to contest. Now, some of it's ping, some of it's bullet velocity, some of it's where you're standing and your timing. But if your timing is good and your bullets are slow, you might still end up in a situation where you're actually unable to secure the soul, even if you are like ready for it. Some characters just have very, very high base bullet velocity, so you won't be able to contest. This is a very much a bread and butter item for any sort of character who needs that extra speed to make sure that you're farming well. Because sometimes, I'll be honest, you shoot it and you feel like you got it, but you actually don't. And then you're just like sitting there scratching your head going, well, I don't really know what I did wrong there. That's when the bullet velocity is coming into play. So the next couple of items, restorative shot, really good for characters who want to just be trading in lane a lot for the tankier characters. Now you're going to heal every time you shoot on a 6-second cooldown as long as you're shooting the heroes first. So this one's a little bit tricky to use. You want to make sure that you're every 6 seconds you're looking at that little cooldown timer in the bottom left to make sure that it's up. And then you swap from either pushing the creeps to hitting the hero to make sure you get the maximum benefit. But this can be really, really, really nice on some characters. The other one to keep in mind under the weapon category is Hollow Point. Now, we're not going to delve too much into shields and what they actually do. This is more of just like a short little tutorial on like the basics of the game. But any sort of shield is going to help loads in the lane where you're playing against ability spam. So any sort of grenade being thrown at you, all those spells flying in for the FPS players who are watching this video and are just like, what do I do about this guy just throwing shit at me? You buy stuff that has shield and you buy stuff that has resist. and that's going to carry you through the early parts of the lane. So now we covered the weapon items. We're going to go over vitality a little bit. Now these ones are a bit more open-ended because every single item that you buy, you'll notice on this tier it says 500. This right here means that's just how much it costs, right? It's simply, this is how much the item costs, 500 souls, easy to understand. And the 11% base health number on the far left means that in addition to the benefits that you're going to be getting from this item, you're also going to get 11% health. Now, under the weapon category, these give 6% weapon damage. So for anything that you want to buy to live, the green category is going to be your bread and butter. You're going to see things like extra health, which is obviously just a bunch of bonus HP and weapon damage. One of my personal favorites, extra regeneration. I cannot even describe how valuable this item was to me when I first started playing the game. Because no matter what happens, you're going to get hit. You're going to get shot, you're going to get abilities thrown at you, you're going to get punched by melee attacks, you're going to get hit by creeps. There's going to be so many things that are happening to you, even in the early parts of this game, that it can be overwhelming, right? And the cool part about extra regeneration is that it's on all the time. You don't have to worry about activating something like healing rate. Now, if you do the math and you look, 370 health regen every 65 seconds, right? That's a little more than, 2 health a second. So if you just have extra regen, you more or less have healing rate, except you don't have to think about it. It just is always happening, okay? Now, don't get me wrong. There are situations where this item can be quite useful, but generally speaking, I much prefer extra regen just for the simplicity's sake, even if it ends up being slightly less efficient, because healing rate can be knocked off by damage, and extra regen cannot. So you're able to contest more often, you're consistently higher health. It just feels good. So the other really, really common ones, extra stamina. This one is massive. If you didn't know, all characters in this game, minus, I think, right now, there's Magennis who starts with 2, Vindicta starts with 2, and maybe 1 or 2 others that I'm forgetting. But baseline stamina count is 3 for a normal character. Extra stamina will put you at 4. So why is 4 good? If you're learning how to move in the game, the first thing that you're going to learn in any tutorial for movement is that dash jumping is really strong. Now, a dash jump takes 2 stamina. If you have 3 stamina, you can't do 2 dash jumps, you can only do 1. And having the ability to go twice will get you in faster, it will get you out faster. It's basically just extra survivability on top of regenerating that stamina faster and getting increased fire rate, which is obviously good for anybody. Whether you're pushing the wave or shooting your bullets at the enemy, it's going to buff your damage, it's going to buff your ability to move, it's going to buff your survivability, it's going to buff all of it, right? Absolutely fantastic item. Now, melee lifesteal. This is really good for any of the characters who are going to be throwing their hands around, so your Moes and Krills, your Abrams, there are some Viscous punch builds out there, I'm sure, and a few others. But this is a sustain item that builds into Lifestrike later. Obviously, super good if you just want to be punching stuff. And then we have Sprint Boots, which I do want to talk about a little bit more, because this is something that didn't make any sense to me when I first started. But I'm going to tell you right now, it's just unintuitive, right? Now, if you read this item, it says 2 meters a second sprint speed. What the hell does that even mean? What's a sprint? In this game, when you're walking around and you're shooting or being shot, you are not sprinting, no matter what. You're moving at a slower speed because you are considered in combat. For any of the people who play other games out there who understand what combat means, it's just taking damage, dealing damage. It turns off your sprint by default. This is not holding down left shift in COD. It's just a mechanic of the game that makes you walk faster once combat is over. And it takes a few seconds to kick in, so keep that in mind. Now, if we look at enduring speed, which is 1 tier up, this says 1.4 meters a second move speed. Important to note that movement speed works all the time, and sprint speed does not. So when you see high MMR players skipping this item, it's because the speed doesn't actually do anything when they're fighting, and some characters simply don't need the mobility. Now, that being said, you will probably buy enduring speed most games on most characters. There are very few exceptions to that rule. But it's just going to be something that you need to get around the map to make sure that you're deep-pushing lanes, that you're getting the fights on time, and all that kind of good stuff. So finally, last category, the spirit items. These are some of the best items for the cost, even within the categories of the 500 tier. So Infuser is fantastic just as a cooldown to get Spirit Lifesteal, which will heal you based off of any ability use, and then you have the 16 additional Spirit Power that you're gaining with the active, and you get a little bit of extra HP and ammo. The basic tier of item just gives you 4 flat Spirit Power anyway, so that's always going to feel really good. Next, you have Spirit Strike, another melee item. This is one of my personal favorites. This buffs your melee attack tremendously. Now, there are 2 types of melees. You have your quick melee, which is just, I think default is Q, and then if you hold it, you will do a charge attack, which will go a little bit further and deal additional damage. Now, this one is giving you 63 spirit damage on top of your punch and giving them minus spirit res. So any character that has a nuke, in addition to pressing this, you can hit the melee first, and then you throw the nuke after the fact, and then you're going to get additional damage from that too. Then you have a little bit of Spirit Shield health, which we talked about earlier. Obviously fantastic. Health regeneration, 1 extra, which is going to be good for the laning phase as well. And then you get a little bit of melee damage percentage on top of that. Mystic Reach. This one is kind of situational, but there are a few characters that would consider it. Mostly, I think, Dynamo in the early game, and Kelvin if you're going for the Frozen Beam Max build. But this one is more of a utility pickup a little bit later on for other characters that actually aren't hardcasters. They love picking this stuff up. Mystic Burst, this is a bread and butter for any spam character, so your Kelvin grenades, your Geist grenades, more or less anything that does over 80 damage. You can pick this up, you get a little bit of extra burst on top of the spell itself, you get Spirit Shield health, which is obviously just, it's effective HP for any sort of spirit damage you're going to be taking, and a little bit of weapon damage. So a lot of these things are pretty self-explanatory, right? You're looking at it and you're trying to decide what the inherent value is in these items. And if you're newer to the game, stuff like extra spirit, you know, any sort of health regen, any sort of shield, it's going to give you that little bit of buffer. And the buffer is going to allow you more time to make choices in the lane to try to gauge what's going on. Because I'm going to be real, there's a lot of stuff going on in Deadlock. It's not just, what do people call it, Overwatch? They're like, is this Overwatch 3? First off, everybody knows Valve can't actually count to 3. And second off, no, it's nothing like that. So this is just a category of items that's going to give you that little bit of extra space that you need to make a choice. And, you know, more regen is obviously good, more shield is good, damage is good. So you're just trying to solve your problems in lane with what's actually happening. And then the last 2 we have over here is Extra Charge. Pretty self-explanatory. Lots of abilities in the game are counted with charges, so you can have multiple instances of that ability readily available. This one just gives you an extra one. It builds in a rapid recharge later. Very nice. And then Ammo Scavenger, which is pretty niche, but there are a few characters who definitely buy this one too. Haze especially. I know it sounds odd because Haze has 25 bullets starting the game, but Haze's mag size actually scales with Spirit. So this item gives you many, many more additional bullets. The 15%, the bonus HP, and then on top of that, you get the added Spirit as well, which adds to the mag size. So now that we've talked about all these items, how am I ever supposed to know what to buy, right? That would probably be the next question that a lot of you would ask. And the simple answer is there are plenty of in-game guides. I'm not going to say that all of them are fantastic, but I am going to say if you're newer to the game and you're enjoying the game, just keep playing, and you will eventually encounter either replays of good players that you can watch, which there are tons of them posted in the Discord. I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to have those videos readily available, or the replays inside the game. Other people are going to be making YouTube guides as well for all sorts of characters, which we may or may not get into, depending on how crazy we go with the videos. But a couple more things I want to actually mention before we wrap things up. As this is a MOBA, it is really important to understand that you're not going to be able to develop all the skills instantly, right? Especially if you're new to the genre. There's a minimap on the bottom right of the screen, and me, as a very dedicated MOBA player, I have probably close to 20 years, yes, 20 years, longer than some of you have been alive, I've been playing MOBAs, right? And when I started playing this game, I could not look at the minimap and play my lane at the same time. It's okay. It's just not going to happen instantly. It takes a little bit of time. So, what's important about the minimap? In this game, there's no wards for all the other mobile players out there who know what wards are. They're basically just things that give you vision of an area, and they're usually stationary, and they just allow you to see information from a distance without ever having someone actually be there in the first place, right? So it's kind of a pro and a con. The pro is that you can actually play the map a lot more freely. The con is that since it's an alpha, nobody actually knows what vision range even means in the game. Nobody knows how far creeps can see. Nobody knows when you're actually visible on the minimap or not, right? So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but the cool part is that all the information that you're getting, you can use to decide to either push a lane, which, you know, pushing is obviously very good. You always want to do that in this game. Or you can decide to go to a fight. So if you are an FPS player and you just started playing MOBAs, please remember that the minimap exists. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap the video up here. It's probably already longer than I want it to be, and my editor's going to have a nightmare fixing all this stuff. But appreciate you guys tuning in. If you want to catch me live on Twitch TV, it's just twitch.tv/Draskyl. I stream basically every single day. And more or less all we're going to be doing for the foreseeable future is Deadlock. So until the next time, guys, thanks for hanging out. See you guys soon. So, like, headshot booster should just be in that video, and it's not. So I have to put the information in there, otherwise it's going to be like, why didn't you say headshot booster? It's insane. And they would be right, but the information's just not there.